Sam, you're back in your old seat. Damn right I am. Let's get the show going. Welcome to the Attic Dungeon. My name is Sam, and whether you just feel too good to do any actual prep or you want to let your players do all the work, I'm here to help you with everything. Before we dive into today's special, I have a few appetizers on the menu. There's two events that involve me to some varying degrees. First off, on the 4th of February, I hate that month, really do, in English. I am part of a live stream hosted by Game Masters Worlds. They're a lovely little Belgian startup that are publishing a book that helps dungeon masters create cities, towns, shops, all those buildings that actually need some life blown through them before they do something. And to showcase their little book, they're hosting a live stream on set date in a church in Leuven, around Leuven actually, a city in Belgium. It's still a functioning church, which I find funny that they managed to get a church to do that. That's not really common in Belgium. But hey, here's me going to church for the first time in years, and it's not to pray, it's to play Dungeons and Dragons. So that should be good fun. I'll post the details down below. I'll post a reminder on my Facebook page because I won't have another episode coming out before that event takes place. It should be good fun. It is also in English, by the way. This is going to be the first time I'll actually be part of a stream that is in English. So all of you glorious fans can partake and enjoy whatever shenanigans we will be up to. Second event involving a much higher degree of my involvement is, of course, let me stretch out the subtle commercial a bit like the publicity, is Day of Dungeons, the festival that I started up last year with my wife and two other really good friends. We have expanded our crew to 12 organizers now. We have also expanded the festival to 2 days. Ain't that great? I think I've already dropped some posts on the Facebook page about the festival, but seeing as it is in 2 months, because it's the weekend of the 23rd of March, like 23rd of March, it's good to post a reminder in an episode, I think. Especially, dear people, since the player tickets for Saturday already completely sold out. So that's 175 people playing Dungeons and Dragons at different tables and different time slots during the day. Obviously, if you just want to visit on Saturday because you want to partake in the workshops, the panels, you just want to visit the market, have a good laugh, food, play the PvP, paint some minis, there's stuff to do over there. Those are still available. If you want to actually play a session, you'll have to buy a ticket for Sunday. Good thing that we actually have 2 days now. So I'll pop that information into the text box down below as well. And now that all my publicity has passed, nothing remains but for me to thank you for watching this, for trudging through my extensive publicity section for once with me. And now let's talk about what we want to talk about today. So today I want to talk about player agency. Obviously, the largest form of player agency in Dungeons and Dragons are all the choices that players make. And those are very present. I mean, the players get to decide how they react to all the situations. It is the Dungeon Master running the general story, adjusting things as we go. But as opposed to some other systems, the players' choices in the larger narrative are relatively limited. And that's okay, that's the system. If you want a system where you're going completely into the cooperative storytelling, there's other systems out there. But I recently discovered that it is really fun to let your players have more input than you would normally do as a dungeon master. Let them come up with some stuff that has actual impact on how the story or a certain encounter is going. And I obviously wanted to lay out some stuff that you could test this out with, like what kind of things can you do to test the waters, whether your players are ready for more narrative responsibility, so to speak. I've obviously talked about railroading versus sandbox before, right? Dragging your players around a fixed story or tossing them into the chaos of the sand pits. Both are options, both have their pros and cons. But I think even within those two modes, there's room for more cooperative storytelling than Dungeons and Dragons offers you out of the box. If you want to test this out, I think the simplest thing you can do is have a session that revolves around the player's backstory. Because it makes a lot of sense that when you're running something related to a player's backstory, that they should have some involvement on how things go or on how things look. Ask them, not necessarily beforehand, but during the sessions, look, you arrive at the village of Bob, the human fighter, as boring as they are, obviously, and ask Bob's player to narrate what the village looks like. Is it just huts? Is it stone? Is it wood? Is it straw? Is it a pauper village? Are there some riches to be found in the village? Who lives there? How large is it? Stuff like that. Let Bob's player figure that out. It's their character. Let them do the work, to be honest. But it also comes to coming up with family members. Some players do this as part of their backstory, but there might be a nice moment for the player to talk. Oh yeah, that's where Uncle Iron Fingers lives. He's a very famous inventor, but lost almost all of his fingers, but he made new ones. Simple stuff like that. It's not going to influence the overarching narrative of your campaign, but it's going to dress up the location a lot more. It's going to ground your player in their own backstory a lot more. And it invites other people to maybe add some detail or do the same for their home part. Whatever that is, like hometown, home dimension, home ghost in a jar, home part. So I think at moments where the focus is on a player's backstory, it's a very safe way to test out if they can handle some narrative responsibility and have them tell what a certain location looks like. Obviously, you're going to have a story in hand. You're going to have the reason why they are there. They will still guide the story, but let them populate the world. Let them color the buildings and breathe life into the tiny little hamlet that they were born into. The next one is a broader system. If you trust your players a bit more, obviously, cooperative storytelling requires that your players are not complete asshats. But if they are, why are you playing with them? So this system should be applicable somewhat. This might be a known system, the I know a guy card. Like at the start of a campaign, you give each of the characters I know a guy point or card. And that's basically something they can use at any point in the campaign where they might be stuck or looking for a solution, that they can reveal that they have a hidden contact here in the town. I think I heard of this system a while ago, and honestly, now that I'm talking about it, I can't remember whether it comes from another system or some vague subclass that I read. So if you know, don't hesitate to drop that in the comments below, because I'm kind of lost on where I got the inspiration for this one. But I really like the idea. Like, any player can go, oh, but I know a guy here is going to be able to help us. And they get to introduce an entirely new non-player character. Somebody they know from long ago. An old war buddy. An ex-lover who runs the exact type of business that sells the stuff that they need to get across. You should notice, normally speaking, that your players are not going to abuse it. They're not going to be like, oh, I know a guy. The god of the sea lives here, and he and I go way back. We used to drink seawater all morning on the beach. That should not be happening. They're going to create characters that are grounded in the environment where you are. They will create normally good, decent NPCs with a nice hook. So that means you have another character that you can reuse later tied to this person's backstory. But they designed it, they gave it the characteristics and the quirks, they gave it a purpose in town. So that's just a part of the world that they're filling in that also has a narrative meaning, because the character will have something that they need. And they might give this freely if they're on good terms, or they will sell this cheaply. But there might also be a quest attached, like, okay, I know a guy, my old war buddy lives here, and I'm sure he knows where all the underground thieves den guys are hiding out, and you go and ask him, but Walter the War Buddy says, I'm willing to tell you, but there's this thing you have to do for me. And suddenly you have an entire new character-bound quest line. Narrative influences abound. Huzzah! If you want to take greater liberties with this, and this is obviously at your own risk, have your players describe scenes that they encounter. They're exploring a musty dungeon. You've already done several rooms and you leave one room blank for your players to describe. Like, what's in this room? Tell me. And they describe the room, and then you have to do some quick thinking, of course. Based on that, you implement some dangers, or maybe a hidden treasure, hidden door, traps, no traps, enemies, stuff like that. Let them design a part of the challenge, and that is really cool. I did that a while ago. Like, my players were coming up onto a scene. I allowed them to describe what they saw. It obviously had to include, like, I asked what is a realistic danger that you might encounter here, and they gave me some really great options, and I worked with those, and they fit the scene really well. They didn't go like, oh, I'm sure some very angry rats live here. No, they took an adequately placed enemy that I could work with. Yes, I had to look up the enemy on the fly. Oh, boo-hoo, that's what Control F and a PDF file is for. But it really allows them to shape the challenge, shape their session even harder than just introducing a new NPC or introducing some family members and a little sleepy Hamlet. I really enjoyed that, and I think it's something I'm going to let my players do more often whenever I can fit it into my my scenes. You can also do this on different places where it might not have such a great impact on your narrative at that point, but it adds to the beauty of a scene. The players are climbing a tower because the wizard lives at the top, and they're taking a look, trying to see the view. Let them describe the view. What does it look like? Maybe they'll add some fun little details for you to work with. Maybe one of them is actually a capable narrator and likes describing vivid scenes. That's you surely have some talent at your player table that you can use for these kinds of things. Let your rule bookish players invent a danger they might encounter. I'm sure they'll come up with something that fits. Let your narrative dreamy players paint a landscape, and maybe even if you enter some kind of dreamscape, let them help make it more absurd and vivid. Don't be afraid to involve your players in the storytelling that's happening at the table. They will feel more involved. And obviously, if your players indicate, wow, this is really great, can we push this to even greater limits? You could look into other systems. I'm not an expert on which system has the greatest stretch of cooperative storytelling, but I know there's stuff like that out there. I think I played the Firefly system for a while, obviously linked to the known Fox series, because their players have something called plot points that it's a currency that switches between player and game master, and the players can use it to create an item that they need at a certain point, or to create an asset that they need at a certain point, which again allows them agency during scenes where they normally wouldn't have one, and thus have a greater impact on the story. You could have a look at that. It also has a lot more flexible system when it comes to anything combat related, or just basically anything. So there's more room for narrative. I'm also a big fan of the One Ring 2nd edition. They have a really good downtime phase, or the fellowship phase, where it's all player agency. They decide what their characters are going to do, and you're just running the math at that point. You're not even looking up like, oh yes, but that will cost like 10 gold or whatever. No, that's all settled. The players tell you what they're going to do based on what they have gathered. They will create the threads for your narrative for that downtime phase, for that fellowship phase, and you just kind of glue them together and make them into something. And I really like that as well. If you know of excellent cooperative storytelling a role-playing systems, do not hesitate to let me know in the comments down below. And if all goes well, I will see you again in 2 weeks in the Attic Dungeon.